We see aging population in our developed economies are truly creating a real talent crunch, putting pressure on the labor markets and our public systems. But there's also opportunity for innovation. What are the new opportunities out there for a society that lives longer? How do we rethink the world of work and create age-friendly jobs for people to be able to work longer? These are a few of the questions that we need to make sure that we're answering. Demographics are also closely connected to technology, as AI and automation can help fill workplace gaps with sustainability, since younger generations are requiring true purpose to be able to drive business. But speaking of technology, it's a megaforce in itself. It's transforming industries and mindsets at the same time. Our research shows that over 70% of every CEO is planning to invest in near term in artificial intelligence. Yet at the same time, they lack clarity in terms of how to govern those technologies ethically, how to integrate them with their workforce. We know that true productivity only comes when technology enhances human skills, not just replacing them. This is a human at the center approach, and it's absolutely critical to ensure that technology is serving people, not the other way around. It's supporting our demographic challenges and can be used to accelerate our sustainability goals. In addition, with respect to that tech challenge, organizations truly need to evolve in terms of how they collaborate with each other. We've learned that no one organization has all of the answers. I can speak for EY when I say that we've developed an ecosystem of over 100 individual partner organizations, technology companies that we look to for guidance, we look to for innovation, and we look to help drive transformation across the business. We wouldn't be able to do this in a siloed world. And it's clear that technology is not separate from the other megatrends, it's integrated into them. Climate and sustainability. Today, we're no longer debating if climate change is real or if it matters. We're seeing the effects now. Over 50% of CEOs, 54 as you can see on the slide, say that climate change has risen on their strategic agenda. And the most effective companies in dealing with climate change and sustainability have embedded it into their business strategy. But not everyone is doing it. Most are not. It's time for us to move into transition. The research that we've done at EY shows that those that embed sustainability into their overall business strategy enjoy better outcomes. And while that's an easy statement to make, I want to equip you with two facts. Those that embed sustainability into their strategy are 40% more confident in their business outlook. That's huge, 40%. Secondly, they're 1.5 times more effective in achieving their goals. 1.5 times by just embedding sustainability as a perspective in their business strategy. But we all know that ambition alone is not enough. Long-term success requires measurable action, not just promises. EY's framework challenges leaders to embed purpose into performance, connecting sustainability to strategy and to growth. The broader business and political environment is forcing CEOs and boards to decide on where they stand on sustainability. And time again, the long-term business case has been proven. Challenges are going to exist in the short term, that's clear. And trade-offs are going to have to be made, but boards and business leaders must take this opportunity to truly realign their strategy and their thinking, and they need to do so as one cohesive body. An integrated strategy is going to fall apart unless it's baked in to the organization. Based on all the research that we've done, we know that sustainability, it's not just good for business, it should underpin every part of the enterprise. And only an aligned leadership team can make this happen. Climate action now, it's an imperative, and it's a business imperative. Now, just a second ago, I mentioned a few phrases around political environment. It's undeniable that the geopolitical landscape is shifting. It's interconnected with business now more than ever before. Each of the developments that you see on that screen talk about the 2025 geopolitical outlook. This is affecting organizations in unique ways and requires specific geopolitical actions to capitalize on the opportunities that they provide. I've identified for you 3 moves that you should know, 3 non-regret moves that every organization should be considering in this current geopolitical environment. First and foremost, ensure that your organization is truly engaging with the stakeholders. No matter what political environment you're in, if you are not engaging at a local and national level, you are not part of the game. Number 2, please make sure that both your organization at a management and at a board level is actually using strategic foresight and simulating what could happen if and when, ensuring that that is discussed at the board and the management level, whether that relates to tariffs or regulation changes. Make sure that you understand the future implications. And 3, my advice, there's a no-regret move in ensuring that you've done a political risk due diligence on suppliers, new market entry, and please, any transactions that you undertake. Those 3 moves are indispensable in today's world. I can say that in the last 24 months, we moved from geopolitical tensions being a topic at the board once annually for a 10-minute conversation to something that needs to be front and center in management meetings at the highest level and at the board to manage both opportunity and risk. I want to be clear that when we talk about geopolitical risk, we know that political, cyber, and environmental aspects all intersect here. It's connected. So that to be successful, you need to be resilient, flexible, and globally aware. So what does this mean for us as leaders? And that's how I started. It means that we have to understand the trends holistically. We need to define and manage the risk dynamically. We need to align people, purpose, and technology. And my most important, we need to focus on trust as the currency for the new leadership. Institutional trust is eroding around us, and leaders must now earn trust and re-earn stakeholder trust each and every day through actions, not just messages. Our guidance is clear. This currency must be actively managed, especially in areas like ESG transparency, responsible AI, data, and ethics. And this, ladies and gentlemen, reflects that purpose-driven strategy, a way to succeed in a Navi world where trust is a strategic asset, not a communication afterthought. I want to end where I began, and that was on generations shaping our future. That video that I showed you, it showed that young people, they're not just adapting to change, they're leading it. Their values and their expectations are reshaping how we lead, how organizations operate, and how we grow. Our job as leaders, through all of these megatrends, is to truly reshape how we lead. It's to empower these generations with clarity, with purpose, and with trust. Together, this is how we build a future that's worth leading. Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you, Julie. There's quite a bit of complexity in all of that. It's quite integrated, all these issues and challenges that we're dealing with, but you've given us some 3 big moves and some great opportunities to think about as we move through our presentations today. So it's now my pleasure, if you, Chantel, would like to make your way to the lectern to introduce her. Chantel is Head of Trade, Environment and Climate Change Branch of the UN Conference on Trade and Development based in Switzerland and spent 8 years leading the New York office. She chairs the UN Task Force on the Social and Solidarity Economy as part of her advocacy for new economic models for sustainable development in support of social and green entrepreneurs and SMEs.
Thank you, Lynn. Good morning, ladies. I got to warn you that what I'm going to say on climate and trade is not really encouraging, but the encouraging thing is we do have an immediate opportunity to make a change because all of our nations are about to submit their national contribution to climate change that Julie just mentioned, and it's still time to actually affect those and ensure they are ambitious enough to stay under 1.5 degrees Celsius rise in temperature, which is the only safe temperature rise to our system. So, having said that, let me go into the technicalities. And let me first say thank you to Irene, and also that it's such a pleasure to be among my tribe. I think each one of us every day transform the microaggression that we get into the force to make the change in the world that is needed. So thank you for being my tribe.
Chantel, can I just hold? Would we be able to change the slides, please?
So under the Paris Agreement, countries agreed to submit their planned national contribution to reduce greenhouse gases. Those are called NDCs, nationally determined contributions. And so we don't want to go into technicalities, but when you hear that word, it means this is the plan your country is preparing and submitting to the UN Climate Change Office. The first assessment of those plans was done in 2023 at the COP. And basically what was found is that the aggregation of all those plans would lead to a 2.6 degree increase in temperature. That's almost twice as much as the 1.5 degree that we should aim for. So, and yet the cost of inaction is much larger than the cost of action. And let me give you just a few examples. Already disruption to food system, water scarcity, heat stress, flood, and the spread of infectious disease are common and leading to mass mortality, large-scale displacement, and conflict. It is predicted that the GDP could reduce by 50% between 2070 and 2090 because of the non-linear impact of these climate change by the end of the century, if we don't act now. Heat exposure is already estimated to reduce labor productivity and to reduce total working hour worldwide by 2%. Cost of shipping is already increasing because we have to change maritime routes. And the insurance costs are spiking. In the US alone, average insurance premium from 2020 to 2023 increased by 33%. Mostly because of climate change impact. Countries are thus urged to boost their plan to reduce their national greenhouse contribution in this third contribution due in September, ahead of the COP in Belém, Brazil, and cooperating internationally to effect this transition away from fossil fuel, triple renewable energy capacity, and double energy efficiency by 2030. That's in 5 years. And despite the US leaving the Paris Agreement, and this is something that we were all worried about, the Secretary General of the UN has been working with the 35 largest contributors, emitters, including, of course, the US, China, the EU, India, and others. And already, the good news is the EU and China have both committed to ambitious economy-wide plan to reduce greenhouse emission that would allows us to stay within 1.5 degrees. Why is these 35 countries or jurisdiction important? Because they represent together 65% of the emission. So if these plans are ambitious, they can offer huge business opportunities in renewable, sustainable agriculture, low-tech, low-carbon technologies, ocean economy, tourism, and supported by carbon markets. But capturing these business opportunity and attracting investment require concerted action among policymakers across sectors at different scale of government, but also, as Julie mentioned, with all the stakeholders at the table, including private sector, but also small, medium enterprises that represent the majority of the business in the world, especially in developing countries. And the design of regulation and measure that will support those national plans need to be done with those at the table. And that's why I invite all of you, this is my call to action today, get involved in the national plan, call your decision makers, make sure who is in charge of those plans, and get involved in them. It's still time, because now they've done the assessment, now they're developing the policies and the plan. And just to give you, and also those will have to be supported by well-orchestrated trade, financial, and investment strategies. The BRIC countries, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, so the largest emerging economy, have already recognized the business values of these changes and have crafted a joint climate finance framework to capture these opportunities, and they'll be adopting it next week at their head of state level. But the Paris Agreement also requires taking into account the historical contribution of climate change, the greenhouse gas emission, and the respective capacity of countries to respond to them. To give you just one number, Africa has 14% of the population. They only contribute 2% to greenhouse gases. And yes, they're the most affected by climate change because they're dependent on rain-fed agriculture and other sectors that depend on climate change. Therefore, these continents and these countries will need the support of our countries, the developed countries, not by charities, because we created the problem, and they need to develop just like we do. And if there's no peace there won't be peace anywhere. And I think that's something that we need to make sure our co-citizens understand. We also need to ensure that the cost of capital for developing countries is reduced. The international financial system right now, it's such that the cost of borrowing for African business and government is twice as much as Germany. So how are they supposed to compete and be able to invest into the transition to low-carbon economy when they can't have access to affordable capital? So we need to address these issues. And there's actually a Financing for Development conference just concluded in Sevilla right now, where some plans have been made to help in that direction. And these business opportunities, of course, as you all business people, you understand, need predictability in the trade system, because how do you invest if you don't know what the future is going to be like? And there's a lot of trade unpredictability, and actually it's evaporating by the day, because the WTO that has been providing pretty much those rules and helping the small economies and developing economy to kind of a certainty about what the rules and the tariff will be are evaporating. And they're evaporating for two reasons. One is, as we increase our ambition for climate, many of them are increasingly trade-related and have an impact on trade. And second, there's the US tariff. So let me quickly go through those. So climate-related trade measures reported to the WTO by countries have doubled since 2009. More than 2,000 non-tariff measures, these are the regulatory standards and all those things that you have to face every day, are in place to support domestic and international climate change mitigation, which regulate 26% already of trade, or world trade. And this will only increase. So, and thankfully the EU, let me take it back. And now that the EU is increasing its ambition, it's reducing under its trading system the allowance, the free allowance it was giving to its business. And under that system, what they're doing is introducing a border carbon adjustment that basically to help alleviate the fear that their company, since they can't compete with the other one that face a lower carbon price in a third country, may displace their industry to that country and then import back those goods into the EU. And therefore, they're saying, let's put a carbon price at the border for our importers that they would charge the exporters, so that basically we can even the playing field between the exporters of these countries and the EU producers. The problem with that is it's a good idea because if you want a level playing field. But there's various ways to do it. And I think, Julie, you mentioned the fragmentation. The EU has its own process. I've talked about the 2000 non-tariff measures. The UK is now talking about a border carbon adjustment. Several other countries are talking about putting them in place, including the US. And each one of them using different measure for embodied carbon, different measure for monitoring and reporting, and the compliance cost of those, especially for micro, small enterprise like you, is outrageous. It's impossible, and basically already putting some of them out of business. So yes, we want to prevent this leakage of carbon to the low carbon pricing jurisdiction, but at the same time, we want to make sure we bring with us those small, medium enterprises so they can decarbonize their economy, because we're all on the same planet. It's the same carbons, the same atmosphere. So we need to help them to do that, and we have an obligation under the Paris Agreement to do so. And the African and least developed countries, 46 of them, basically that contribute almost nothing to climate change, in their national plan are putting in there what are the technology, what are the investment that they need from us to help them to do this transition. So on the positive side, these measures basically can help reduce global greenhouse emission, promote dissemination of green technologies in low carbon value chain that generate revenue, and then incentivize other jurisdictions to put carbon prices. Already several countries, including Brazil, have put in place these carbon pricing, so this is a good news. In addition, however, the carbon fee is one expense, and then the measurement, the monitoring, review, verification, reporting cost of exporting these are now increasing global trade tension and trigger retaliation, which is just making the trade system even more uncertain. The sheer amount of these policies have trade impact and increase in addition to increasing compliance costs, basically is alternating the trade flows in the economy at the disadvantage of developing countries, and many of you are from developing countries, because of higher embodied carbon in product, because except for some exceptions such as Brazil and Paraguay that have very green grid, if you didn't have access to those technologies to decarbonize your system, then you have higher carbon in your product, and when they get exported, they face a higher tariff. So, but this just means we need to work together to actually reduce the cost. And probably instead of having a one country by country developing their own monitoring, review, and verification system, we should all collaborate to create one and then adapt to local conditions, but at least to have a common principle. Now, the second uncertainty, of course, comes from US tariff. The US has announced a 10% universal tariff across the board from most countries, and then a 11 to 50% tariff on approximately 60 nations. That was put temporarily on hold until 8th of July, but as of yesterday, Vietnam has agreed of a 20% tariff, and we will see where these will go. So we predict at UNCTAD that this uncertainty could reduce global GDP growth by up to 1.5% and cause trade fluctuation of up to 10%. As I mentioned, these are they are the political choices that we can impact. And I will conclude by saying that make sure you politician and compatriot understand that investing in the SDGs and climate in these countries build more than school, hospital, and energy access. It builds trust, prosperity, and hope for the future, which mean more peace and less refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. Climate's very close to my heart because Australia is bidding for COP31, and if we win, we will be hosting it next year, which is a very short lead time. But what I wanted to mention also, last year we heard about the story of Tuvalu. It's a Pacific island that has actually put all its history up into the cloud, and now Australia, and you might be able to comment on this, Chantal, has a special visa for those residents to be able to move as the oceans rise. It's a very sad story, but it's what we're confronted with. I did want to ask a quick question on the ESG agenda. You know, in Europe and Australia, we are being regulated now, the big emitters and the bigger companies having to report. There's a lot of SMEs, leaders of SMEs and entrepreneurs in the room. Scope 3, which is the supply chain, hasn't come in for forceful reporting at this point in time, but what advice can you give the audience what they should be preparing in terms of their data now and frameworks?
And thank you so much, Julie, for this. And yeah, To Value is like the first, but not the last. It's an example of what's happening to, we're all waiting for us if we don't act now. On the advice, I think it relates to what I just mentioned in terms of monitoring, verification, and reporting costs. Each of us cannot afford to do this on our own, and therefore reach out to your government to ensure that a system is developed nationally. The EU is doing that. Each country is doing that in the EU, and Australia and other countries are doing that, so that you can work with them in developing a plan that is then harmonized at least at the principal level with the system, and then that your government work with other governments to ensure that we act now on ensuring the system is developed before it becomes even more fragmented.
Great advice, thank you. Now we go into the demographics with Muriel. The Honourable Muriel Pennicard is a former Minister of Labour in France, a board director of international companies and NGOs, author and art photographer, twice Ambassador of France as CEO of Business France in 2014, and a permanent representative to the OECD in 2020. Her impact has been truly international, and she has also founded and chairs the Sakura Fund, which supports committed emerging artists. And I know Berlin has a big artist community here, so thank you for your work. Over to you.
Thank you, Lynn. Dear ladies, demographics is key. It's key to understanding the major economic and social trends, but it's key because it's one of the rare exact human sciences with some kind of little certainty compared to everything else. And so it's key to anticipate and to help us to prepare of what we have to face and to build. So today, I would like to share with you a quick overview of 3 major trends for the years and decades to come. And fantastic, it works. The advent of Asia and Africa, the increase in the world population, the shift between an aging North and the young South, and we'll see together the impacts on growth, workforce, immigration, and of course, women. Today, the world population is 8.2 billion, and it will continue to grow until the 2080s, before declining. Not very good news for the climate change. As Asia is already the leading continent, you see on the left, with more than half of the world population. This demographic leadership of Asia will continue, even if its population will stabilize and even settle down a little. But the new phenomenon that has begun and will accelerate is the era of Africa. Africa will experience a meteoric rise to reach 2.5 times its current population at the end of the century. Africa will represent more than twice as much as Europe, North America, and Latin America combined. This upheaval of the center of gravity of the world's population, already at work today, is often underestimated in its consequences. In Asia, it's clearly India, the world's largest population, and yesterday China, that have driven or are driving this demographic growth. In Africa, many countries, but particularly Nigeria and Congo, will experience a complete upheaval of their population. When you look at country, we also see tectonic changes since 1950. In 1950, China was the largest population in the world, but with a third of its current population, followed by India. Since then, the Indian population has been multiplied by 4. The US was the third country, followed by Russia Japan, and Germany. Germany, the only country, European country in this table. India is already ahead of China today with a much stronger demographic dynamism. The US are still the third population, but not for long, followed now by Indonesia, Pakistan, and Nigeria. Germany, the larger European country, no longer appears in the top 10 countries anymore. Looking forward to 2100, not only India is ahead, but China still second, will have lost half of its population if the current trends continue. The population of Nigeria, Pakistan, and Congo will have more than double and will be part of the top 5 countries, while US will be relegated, if I may say, to the 6th place. It's not a small evolution, it's a revolution. Why is this demographic shift? The aging of the population is general, thanks to the increase in life expectancy most everywhere in the world. But north of the planet, North America, Europe, Russia, China, Japan, combine this lengthening of life with a sharp decline in the birth rate over the past 20 years. We started to hear that in the media, but it has started 20, 30 years ago. 1/3 of Europeans are more than 50 years old. And to compare, 1 in 2 Africans is under 20 years old. And even under 15 for Niger. As an example, we'll see Germany, thanks to your host. Today, the population is elderly. And you can see the babies are on the bottom and the elder people, that's the global, the world. You will see that it will be aging. And if we compare to Germany on the top is today. The babies on the bottom, on the up, it's the elderly. So today, 1/3 of German population is over 60 years old. 1/3. And the country will lose 11 million of workers by 2030, tomorrow morning, only for demographic reasons. On the contrary, the age structure of Nigeria, you see, on the top it's today, very young, even if it will balance over time, and it's one of the youngest and faster growing in the world, with 60% of the population is below 25. The consequences of this double effect of aging and birth rate are very strong. To start with the economic fields, the first one is obviously the availability of workforce, since there will be surplus of labor force in Africa, partly in India and in South Asia, and countries more in the north of the planet with a labor force shortage, much more dramatic than today, and it does exist today, mainly all over the north of the planet. So for a country, what does it mean? Having a young population is obviously a very huge advantage for the future. It's what we call demographic dividend. In terms of consumption, dynamism, entrepreneurship. But in the short term, and like in climate, we have the conflict between the short term and the long-term interest. In the short term, it represents phenomenal needs in infrastructure, technology, jobs creation, education, healthcare, housing, food supply, water, transportation, etc. Most of the countries cannot support the needed investment alone. So the dividend, the demographic positive dividend, can also contribute to ecological degradation, increased inequalities and conflicts. But it matters for all the other countries. Nobody is alone. Like in climate, in demography, our destinies are linked. The demand for workforce in the north and the excess of offer in the south will increase the professional migration. I would even say that this complementarity and solidarity between countries is so needed that it will probably surpass the ideological barriers that are rising everywhere. But what about the women? The participation of women is highest at the two extremes, in the poorest, in the richest countries. But informal jobs of course, it's in the richest countries. I would just remind us that almost all women work on the planet, a way or another, but only 55% of women have a paid job, compared to 79% of men. So this participation to the workforce will potentially increase, but still lower than it could. And as I said, it increases more in the developed country. As you can see, that's the history of Europe. You can see by up and down, but the participation of in Europe and US and North America, this increase over time. Why does demographics matter? The increase of the world population, increased pressure on global warming energy issues and urbanization, knowing that Asia, the most populated part, is already the most urbanized part of the world. It increased professional migration, inequalities, and risk of inflation. And in developed countries, and with other also, it goes with a sociological change, it's not demographic, but you will touch it also. Young people have different expectations of the previous generation because they don't believe so much in the future. So they believe in the present, they believe in themselves, but today, immediately, close to them. And so they are looking for purpose, for work-life balance, for other values. So if we focus on women, the challenge for women is not to stay out of this dynamic, but to seize opportunities. Firstly, basic but crucial, having a higher participation rate in the economy, that our economic independence, that's the first lever of freedom. Secondly, face together, both in developed and developing countries, again, a very strong social and political pressure rising on the birth rate, without respect of women's choice. Back to the future. Third, train and invest in technology, artificial intelligence, and science for health and ecology. Missing this wave would mean missing 1 or 2 generations' opportunities. It's now. To prepare the future, to shape the future, it starts now. And fourth, of course, we need to consider our number one priority, girls' education. 55% of the jobs that will do our children don't exist today, thanks to AI, technology, and green transition. So we need to prepare for uncertainty, but you can prepare with education, including for uncertainty. The skills set has to be larger. Demography matters and help us to understand the megatrends. It pushes us to act immediately. Women and girls matter. We matter for next generation, for the sake of humanity. So let's not give up, my friends and sisters. Thank you.
Thank you, Muriel. Definitely demographic challenges impact women different across different regions, and you coming from a ministerial portfolio, there are different levers and reforms that can happen in different countries. It's complex, right? The North and the South. So thank you for that presentation. I'm sure there'll be some questions from the audience. Just in keeping in time, Anna, I'm going to call you up now to talk about AI. If I can just briefly mention, you are Senior Vice President of IBM and you have overall responsibility for market development for the company's growth markets, including Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Mexico, UAE and India. And you are a participant in events like the World Economic Forum in Davos, Viva Tech and Mobile World Congress, speaking around AI quantum. So we are in good hands. Over to you.
Thank you, Lynn. My fans are all here. I have a big delegation from IBM. Big shout to the IBM team. Very good. So just an energy check. How are we? Are you still with us? Yes? Great. You look so great from here. Such a colorful room. I think that's the biggest difference between a conference for women and men. It's the colors that you see. Beautiful. All right, I mean, Muriel really left a great point for us to reflect on and think about, because demography is destiny. And the only way to shape this destiny in a way that is positive for us is with the support of technology. I think it's very hard to disconnect progress from technology. And that has happened in many fields of our lives. If you think about healthcare, increasing our lifespan, increasing the productivity so that products that are basic to us became more affordable and accessible. Telecommunications, making the world much more interconnected. The world is smaller, and Julie touched on those topics brilliantly in her presentation. And now we have another massive emerging new technology among us, which is artificial intelligence. If you think about all the technological waves, all the shifts that happened in information technology over the past 50 years, that is probably the most profound impact we are experiencing and we are going to see. This is the technology that has the highest adoption and the fastest adoption rate in history. Let me just share with you some basic information. When the iPhone was introduced in 2007, it took 10 years. By 2017, we had 2 million apps in the Apple Store. We are projecting that by 2028, we are going to have 1 billion new applications that are going to be created by or created because of artificial intelligence. So AI is not just a shift. It's a shift, it's a rift, it's a cliff moment, it's everything happening at the same time. And I think we're all looking and observing in the news the changes that are happening at a pace that is absolutely unbelievable. Now, AI is not a new technology, or it's not a new concept. The first conference about AI happened in the 50s. What happened is that the technology changed its goalpost over time. So basically, we started with machine learning, which was using data to make predictions, to get insights, to make better decisions. And over the past 3 years, we have been experiencing a very new form of artificial intelligence that is called generative artificial intelligence, generative AI. And that's what made AI so accessible, so simple for any person to use, to experiment with, to introduce in the way that they work, in the way that they live. As generative AI evolved, we also improved the way that we interact with technology through assistants, chatbots. And now we are entering a new era, that is the era of agentic AI. So, what is an agent? I would say that at this point, the industry is still working on what is the right and the, let's say, common sense definition of what an agent is. But I think we are all coming together with some set of characteristics that define an agent and separates an agent from a simple assistant, co-pilot, or chatbot. 3 characteristics of an agent. First, it's autonomous. It makes decisions in an autonomous way. It figures out how to solve a task. Second, it learns. It self-improves. So next time it's going to execute that task, it's going to be performing better than it did before. And it's usually goal-oriented. It has the objective to accomplish an outcome. Best way to make it tangible, what an agent is compared to the traditional artificial intelligence we have been used to, is if I use a very simple example. Let's say that I want to give a dinner party, and I want to cook a dinner inspired in Thai food. Where's the Thailand people? Very good. I am not an expert in Thai food, though I love it. So if I go to a chatbot, to an assistant, I would say, I want to host a dinner for 10 friends, and I want to cook a dinner inspired in the Thai cuisine, and I want to spend, I don't know, $100, $150 per person in this dinner. An assistant is going to come up with recipes. It's going to tell me the ingredients I need to buy. It's going to tell me the quantities I need to buy, and it's probably going to point to me some of the sites, the online shops that I can go to in order to buy the ingredients for my dinner. If I give that task to an assistant, to an agent, that agent is going to not only come up with the recipes and the quantities, it's also going to go do a search on the online shops and order everything I need for my dinner at the right budget and have it delivered in my house in time for me to cook the dinner. So it does the complete task. It doesn't do the dinner yet. Hopefully we're going to get there. But it really eliminates what I think is the most boring part of preparing ourselves for a dinner party. So that you can really focus on the fun, which is cooking, which is being among your friends. Now, we are still trying to grapple our heads around agents and AI and how this is going to influence the way that we live and work. And there is already a new technology looming on the horizon, now becoming more and more a possibility, and that's quantum computing. Now, that's the other question for a cocktail party. What is a quantum computing or quantum computer? So what differentiates a quantum computer from a traditional computer is its unit of information. So traditional computers, they operate with a unit called bit, which has only two states. It can either be on or off, 0 or 1. Quantum computers operate with qubits. And the interesting thing about these units of information, due to the quantum mechanics characteristics of it, and I'm not going to go into those details, is that they can have a state of 0 or 1 or anything in between at the same time. So what does it mean in practice? That your ability to process information increases exponentially when you're using a quantum computer. Now, if you have the quantum mechanics, which is a phenomenon of the nature, if you have all this knowledge already among us, why is it so hard to have a quantum computer? The reason for that is because those qubits are very sensitive particles, very sensitive elements. So anything from temperature, vibration, light that gets into those systems can interfere its state. So it makes the computer extremely unstable. And all the research and development that has been happening right now is with the objective to address this problem called noise, which makes quantum computers still unreliable to do most of the tasks that we expect them to do. IBM has been investing in quantum for quite some time now, but since 2020 we decided to publish a very transparent roadmap with our expectations of when we believe quantum computers can really become useful and can have an advantage over classical computers. Because if you cannot prove the advantage of quantum computers on classical computers, we might as well continue with the existing technology that we have, because it's not an easy task to build quantum computers. So basically, the first step was really to set up data centers, to create a programming language called Qiskit, to really create the ecosystem so that we can start to think what are the use cases, what are the types of problems that quantum computers can really solve. Then we started to deal with the fact of how we can really demonstrate quantum advantage. And now we are on the verge of really building fault-tolerant quantum computers, which are going to have commercial usage, and our expectation is that it is going to happen by the end of this decade. Is it a firm date? No, it's still a lot of research going on in this field, but the great breakthrough that we made a couple of weeks ago is that we have come to a point in the evolution of the development of quantum computers where we are moving from science, which is really like we still need to do a lot of research to find a way to make this work, to engineering, which is I understand the problem I need to solve. Now I need to build the components, the software, all the elements that are required to make it available and make it useful for applications. So that's where we are today with quantum. Exciting moment for the technology. Of course, lots of things that we need to think about. I'm sure that you have always heard that, that you have already heard that quantum computers can break all the cryptography keys that exist today. So we need to completely change the way that we secure data going forward. EY is a tremendous partner for us in that space. And we have been working with a lot of clients in that transition. So, but if you outweigh the benefits against the potential impacts, quantum computer is going to open a new world of possibilities for us in solving problems that today would be impossible to solve with the traditional classical computers. So in conclusion, and Julie said that very well, and I think that we had a lot of other thinking aspects here in this morning. This is a leadership shift more than anything. I always connect the moment we are living today with what happened in the Industrial Revolution. Imagine the amount of people we have had to move from the fields into the cities. People had to learn how to write, how to read, how to do math. They had to acquire new skills. We had to build a completely new infrastructure for these people to live in a different place. So this is the moment that we are in. We have, as leaders, the responsibility to bring everybody along in this journey, to make sure that these technologies are accessible, these technologies can have positive impact for everyone, and we got to make sure that the entire population is on board in terms of education, as Muriel mentioned before. And finally, this is about value creation. It's no longer just cost efficiency, it's really transforming the way we work, the way we live, the way we operate, hopefully bringing a much brighter future to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. We have time for a couple of questions. If anyone wants to make their way to the microphone. And in the meantime, can I ask about productivity? And any of the panelists might want to answer this. But if the human input, the output of the input has been human up until recently, with all this integration of Gen AI, agentic, then we've got quantum coming, should the measure of productivity change, and what would that look like?
So I think first you have to be super disciplined on the processes you want to transform with AI. So the first step is that you really understand what is that you want AI to bring to you in terms of the way that you operate. So I'll give you an example, what we have been doing in the area of HR, particularly when you need to provide support to your workforce, to your employees. We automated that process across IBM. Today, 94% of the interactions of an employee with our HR department is automated through an AI agent. Our estimation is that allowed us to save 500,000 hours of work, because that's exactly how many interactions we had coming through our help desks, coming through emails, that we could effectively measure. So if you don't have clarity on the use case, if you don't have clarity on the process that you want to transform, it's very hard to measure productivity. But in the end, I mean, once you have those metrics in place, it becomes very tangible. I don't know, Julie, if you want to complement, because you are working with it every single day.
No, I think you said it really well, Anna, in terms of defining what productivity you want to measure and then what you're going to do with it. I think we've decided that it's easy to measure the hours that you save. It's harder to determine what you're going to do with the hours that you saved. The human element of that, and I know that we've incorporated, I'll just give an example, working with Anna, we've incorporated something at EY called Thrive Time. So we estimate some of the work that we've been able to save and automate with AI, the basic research work, we've actually turned around and are providing that back to our people for them to do reskilling in terms of leveraging that in a positive way to get them more comfortable We think that's the only way to diffuse AI through an organization is to get people comfortable that actually, if you really believe in human at the center, you need to reinvest in your people so that they can get the most out of that AI. And that's, Anna, what you're effectively doing together, IBM and EY, as we're automating the processes, make sure that you take that saved time and reinvest it into the workforce for them to upskill and redefine where the future goes.
Onboarding is going to look very different in the future. We have one question. I know. I'm at time. Quick answers, quick questions.
Okay. Who? Me? Yeah. Okay. So hi, I'm Severin Fiegler. I work for Infineon Technologies, and we're a semiconductor company, and we are working a lot with AI. And you just mentioned, Anna, that within HR it has a huge effect on reducing workload, but that also means it reduces the work that people actually start to learn with. So we see that in consultancy firms and law firms as well. What is your take on the learning journey for young people coming out of university when a lot of the tasks that they used to gain experience are now taken over by AI? How can we compensate that?
I think this generation is going to be critical for us, and I've been telling this a lot. 10 years ago, we were talking about the digital natives. Now we want the AI natives. And I know that I expect that each one of this new generation that is coming to the workforce, they'll expect to arrive at a company and they're going to be working with a technology that is similar to ChatGPT. And you're going to bring tremendous, tremendous value to us by doing that. So I think we need to change the way that the work is expected from this generation and make sure that they are onboarded with characteristics that are related to how AI is actually affecting the way we work. But I see tremendous value.
Anna, if I can just build on what you said, I 100% prescribe to that. My advice for everyone thinking about AI and the impact, it's not about designing, how many people. It's redesigning the job descriptions and the training that results. And if you can get that in your mind, it's redistributing what the work actually is.
Quick question.
So I really appreciated the intersectionality of climate with population, with AI, all the problems of the world basically you described in one panel. What is the most worrying thing for each of you, and what could we do about it?
Maybe just one answer there. Anyone?
What is our major worry? To me, is education. To me, is really making sure that people are re-skilled to this new world.
For me, it's because of with AI, with greening transition, and with demographics, we need to understand and value what the human value. And today we cannot, in accounting, human is a cost. And tomorrow it will be a value, but we don't know how to promote that. And that's, for me, the priority.
I'd say quickly, get up to speed on all the business opportunities coming out in the low-carbon economy and all of the new investment mechanisms that are being put in place by development banks that can help de-risk some of these investments for you.
I would say it's only one risk. It's leadership. It doesn't matter what challenge you face, whether it's technology, demographics, or climate change. You need leaders to address it. And making sure that you have strong people that are standing up for their values, for their ethics, with the purpose is critical.
One more question?
Look at the line. One last question.
We need to expand this session, Irene. It's too short.
Short.
Very short. I'm grateful and relieved that Chantal spoke about the CBAM, because that's going to shift the economic powers worldwide. That means that importers from China, from the Gulf, from Morocco are going to have to pay a carbon tariff entering into Europe. How do you see Europe reacting to the possibility that international trade doesn't want to cross the border?
Yeah, I think if the EU has realized that they need friends at this time because trade is going sideways, let's say. And I think, and this is, European people could say more, but I think the reform that we're just addressed and agreed in EU reflects that. It's basically as a de minimis clause that exclude 99% of the exporters, because if it's below certain tons, they will be excluded, which reduce the cost. And I think what we should be doing now, and this is something that we're working on, is working with the EU in the regional and trade agreements to ensure that their technical cooperation goes towards helping countries to meet these new standards through an MRV system, through decarbonization, technology transfer, affordable technology transfer, and I think then we all benefit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.